Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally shift how you think about pain by diving into a fascinating new scientific paradigm from our source material. If you've ever dealt with an injury, or maybe an ache that just won't quit, or even long-term chronic discomfort, you already know exactly how frustrating it can be to figure out what's really going on inside your body. But today, we're going to look at all of this through a completely fresh lens.
So, what if your pain isn't just about tissue damage? Think about that for a second, because it really challenges the outdated traditional idea of how our bodies work. For a long time, we've treated pain like a simple light switch, right? You get hurt, the switch flips on, you feel pain, the tissue heals up, the switch flips off. Simple. But the research we're unpacking today tells us that old model is just fundamentally incomplete. Pain is not a simple, one-to-one signal of tissue damage. It is a highly complex, predictive system.
All right, let's look at Section 1, the landscape of pain.
To really grasp what's happening in your body when you hurt, we first need to map out the terrain. We have to visualize exactly where pain lives and how it behaves. The source material introduces this brilliant concept called attractor dynamics. I want you to picture pain not as a single isolated symptom, but as a dynamic three-dimensional landscape. Imagine this wide, uneven terrain with two really deep valleys. One valley is labeled pain, and the other is labeled no pain. Your current state of physical comfort isn't just a flip switch. It's literally determined by where you are resting on this uneven 3D topography.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. How do we actually populate that landscape? Imagine thousands of different factors acting like heavy, weighted balls rolling all across this terrain. These balls represent everything going on in your life. You've got your biological balls, which are things like actual tissue damage, cellular inflammation, and chemical markers. But you also have psychological balls rolling around, things like fear, where you're focusing your attention and what you expect to happen. And finally, you have social balls, encompassing your support system, your environment, and learned behaviors. Where the majority of these weighted balls naturally settle, well, that determines your actual pain state. It's a collective, system-wide gravity.
Moving right along to Section 2, the trampoline effect.
So how do these thousands of weighted balls actually move around this complex landscape? How do they end up stuck in one valley over the other? To understand this, the text uses a highly evocative analogy, the trampoline effect. Picture two people of completely different weights bouncing on a trampoline that's scattered with all those little weighted balls we just talked about. The heavier person, representing the powerful pull of pain, creates a massive deep depression in the fabric. Naturally, gravity dictates that the balls are going to roll toward them and cluster around that heavy weight. The lighter person represents no pain and creates a much shallower depression. But here's the absolute critical mechanism. They are both jumping. When that heavier person is airborne, that deep depression in the trampoline momentarily flattens out. In those brief, split-second windows, the balls can actually escape that strong gravitational pull and shift toward the lighter person who is currently grounded.
The crucial takeaway here is that, yes, gravity usually pulls the balls toward the heavier person the second they land back on the trampoline. But those brief, airborne windows of reprieve, that is when things actually shift. Over time, the balls will tend to cluster around the heavier weight, sure, but it's never absolute. Those moments when the pain prediction is airborne and the fabric is totally flat are exactly what allows your system to reorganize itself.
Which brings us to Section 3, acute pain and your baseline.
Let's apply these rules of gravity and trampolines to your real day-to-day life, starting with your body's initial starting point, even before an injury happens, because your starting point dictates everything. Have you ever wondered why two people with the exact same physical injury can experience completely different pain levels? It all comes down to their pre-existing baseline tilt. Your starting landscape is shaped by your whole system health. We're talking your accumulated life experience, your sleep quality, stress levels, metabolic health, movement habits, the whole shebang. If you have a systemically unhealthy baseline, your landscape is already deeply tilted toward the pain valley. But if you have a systemically healthy baseline, your landscape is much flatter, naturally biased toward the no pain side.
Our source material lays down a really profound rule here. When tissue damage arrives, it deepens whichever valley the system is already primed toward. Think about it. If your landscape is already heavily tilted toward the pain valley because of poor health, crazy high stress, or terrible sleep, even a super modest injury can trigger incredibly severe acute pain. Your system already has a massive amount of inertia pulling toward pain. Conversely, a healthy person with a flatter landscape experiences way less intense pain from the exact same injury. And as their tissue heals, their landscape easily flattens back out toward no pain, because they just have far less systemic inertia to overcome.
Let's dive into Section 4, the gravity of chronic pain.
But wait, what happens when that pain just doesn't go away? What happens when your system starts to change permanently? In chronic pain, the landscape itself is actually reshaped by your history. It's no longer just about an acute injury. The system has literally learned to predict pain. Prior episodes have essentially dug that pain valley so incredibly deep that the prediction of pain becomes your default state.
So what exactly is doing all that digging? It's things like those prior episodes of pain, intense fear, cellular sensitization, and avoidance behaviors. Where you stop moving simply because you're terrified of hurting. It's even social reinforcement. These factors physically reshape the baseline geometry of your landscape. Because of this, even without any significant new tissue damage, those weighted balls just naturally settle into the pain valley. The baseline geometry itself is exerting a constant, inescapable gravitational pull. It's exactly like having that heavy person just standing on the trampoline, not jumping anymore. Everything just aggressively rolls toward the pain.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, the path to recovery. Now, I know everything we've covered so far might sound a little daunting, but understanding the specific gravity is actually the ultimate key to hacking the trampoline and finding a real path to recovery. Recovery happens through a process called counterprediction. Because your system has learned to predict pain, you have to give your body experiences that actively violate that prediction. This means having a moment where you move a certain way and realize, hey, that actually didn't hurt, or noticing that your inflammation decreased safely, or realizing that a movement you were deeply afraid of didn't result in the catastrophic pain you expected. Every single time you have a counterpredictive experience, it's like that heavy person on the trampoline takes a jump, the fabric flattens out, and a ball escapes toward the no-pain valley.
And you guys, these changes go incredibly deep. Every time you violate that pain prediction and a ball shifts, you trigger nested mechanisms. This isn't just in your head, it is highly physical. It cascades all the way down to cellular desensitization. It triggers neuroplasticity, which is literal synaptic rewiring in your nervous system. It creates behavioral learning, where your actual movement patterns change. And it results in social contextual encoding, which anchors you ecologically to a healthier state. A single successful counterprediction ripples through all of these levels.
The absolute biggest takeaway from our source text for your own recovery is this: forget the magic bullet. You aren't trying to push all the balls up a mountain all at once. You are looking for repeated, consistent, small shifts. You want to capitalize on those brief, airborne windows of opportunity, those tiny moments of reprieve, to slowly and surely reshape the baseline landscape back toward health. You are gradually making the pain well shallower and the no pain well deeper, one small counterprediction at a time.
Ultimately, by understanding that your pain is a dynamic, shifting topography rather than a permanent fixture or a broken light switch, you reclaim the power to reshape it. You are not stuck. The terrain can be molded. So I want to leave you with this question to think about. What small window of opportunity will you jump into today? What tiny counterprediction can you make right now to begin shifting your baseline and moving those balls toward the no-pain valley? Think about it and start reshaping your landscape.